Benjamin Franklin once said there were only two things that were certain in life, and that was death and taxes. And sometimes, as advisors, we offer tax services, or it's necessary for us to provide tax documents that are essential to service a client. So since it is so stressful, that we have some tips and tricks that we want you to keep in mind for this season and to go ahead and implement for next season as well. So to go ahead and start off, we always begin with talking about clean data that is necessary for this session, and taxes are no different. So I'm going to click on my name in the top right hand corner, and I'm going to go to Manage Your Account. And if you go to the Manage Your Account section, underneath Admins Only, you're going to have an area here that says Manage Database List. And this is where I want to talk about first, where it's a good idea to set up this area to make sure you have good data down the line. So if you are in the business of providing tax services, maybe you also provide insurance and you also provide advisory services, then you're going to use the keyword list to go ahead and classify out that service. So if you click on keywords, your list might be blank, but this is where I would suggest to go ahead and put in all of the services that you provide. So in our firm, we do provide tax services. So we did add in a keyword in here that says tax client. So that way, if I do have a new client, let's say I just met the best scientist in the world, Dr. Emmett Brown, at lunch, and he's a client of mine now, and I want to go ahead and make sure that it's represented that he's a tax client of mine, then I can go over to his record, and toward the middle of the page, you will have an area for keywords. And if you go ahead and click Add in the top right hand corner, you can go ahead and select those ones that you want to add to this record. So I met Doc Brown, he's a tax client. I want to go ahead and represent that in my system. So I went ahead and added in a keyword that said tax client. And then whenever somebody is a tax client of mine, then I'm going to go to their record and I'm going to add tax client to their name. Now, the big benefit of doing this is so that we can cast a net over this group later, because it might be the day before taxes are due and you need to send out an email to everyone that's a tax client to make sure that they have everything that they need. So if you needed to do that, you could go to Contacts over here on the left-hand side, and you can select on the Advanced Search tab here at the top. And then you could go ahead and run an advanced search for that data you're looking for. So if we're looking for that keyword level data, I'm going to select Contact Keyword as the type and then Keyword as the field. So I could go ahead and set that equal to tax client, since I want to cast a net over just my tax clients. And there we go. As long as I'm keeping good data within my system, I'm adding in that keyword, and then if somebody answers yes to that keyword, then I'm attaching it to their record. Then I can successfully run a search here and cast a net over all of my tax clients. And if I were you, while you're here, I would go ahead and hit save and go ahead and name this tax clients. So that way you never, ever, ever have to run this search again. All you'll have to do next time is click on the recently viewed icon in the top right-hand corner and then click on QuickList. Because now what you did is you created a list of your tax clients, but it didn't save the list of names. It saved this search. So as you manipulate your data and you add or remove tax client keywords, this list is automatically going to adjust. All right, now I want to go back to Emmett Brown's record. So I'm going to go back to the recently viewed icon, and I'm going to go back to Doc Brown's record. And another key piece of clean data that I would suggest to implement to kind of enjoy those tax favors is the tax qualified box on an account. So if you're on a contact record and you want to see the accounts that you have for this person, you can go to accounts on the left-hand side. But within each account, you can see if it's a tax qualified account, if you're keeping that level of good data. Because if I click on this account here and I select edit account, you're going to have a box here that says tax qualified. Now, this box that I'm highlighting here that says tax qualified does not come over from a data feed. So if you do have your accounts fed over from a data aggregator or custodian, and that account that's being fed over is tax qualified, it's not going to automatically check off this box. This is a manually required data entry box that you have to fill out. So that's why I'm kind of representing this in my clean data section, because if you want to run reports or if you want to run searches down the line to go ahead and cast a net over all of your tax qualified accounts, or even higher level, just all of your clients that have a tax qualified account, then you can go ahead and have that search return back accurate results if you're checking off this box. So you might want to evaluate whether or not it's valuable in your firm to go ahead and go to each account and represent whether or not it's tax qualified. But I personally think it's a great level of data to have on your system. Because if you go to reports on the left-hand side, you do have some account reports that come built with the system. And you do have one here at the bottom that says accounts by tax qualified type. So these are all of the accounts in my system that currently have that tax qualified box checked off. So it's really helpful to be able to run reports. You could even run searches off of that. So if you do find that it's valuable, go ahead and start implementing that expectation to your team that I want you to check off that tax qualified box if it's a tax qualified account so we can have accurate reports. But let's go back over to Doc Brown's record. I'm going to go back to my recently viewed icon, and I'm going to go back over here to Doc Brown. And the next tax level data that you can keep on a client is pretty obvious. It's all of their tax information. So their adjusted gross income, whether or not their information is confirmed through a tax return. So you can keep all of that tax level information on a client as well. If you go to a contact record, you're going to click on Know Your Client on the left-hand side. And underneath Know Your Client, you're going to want to click on Financials. So if you go to a contact record, go to Know Your Client, and then click on Financials. And the second box here has all of that estimated tax information. So you can keep that tax level information within the contact system as well. So if you do have this information for Doc, go ahead and click Edit and put in all of that information that applies. All right, so here we go. I went ahead and added all of this information for Doc Brown. So now if I want to refer to that tax level information, it's always going to be there for me. Now, this information that I'm highlighting is all manually entered as well. So it's unfortunately not going to come over from a data aggregator or a custodian. If you wanted this data inside of your system, you would have to go to each record and put it in, or you can use our custom export to go ahead and fill in that information in bulk. But I think the big benefit of putting in this tax level information is so that you can search on that tax level data. Because if I click on contacts on the left-hand side, I can click on the advanced search tab at the top, and then underneath type, you have an entire section for all of your tax information. So for type, I'm going to select tax information. And then for field, depending on what I'm looking for, I could go ahead and see what I'm looking for. So if I want to cast a net over everyone who has an estimated tax bracket or an estimated gross income, or I wanted to see everyone that was confirmed through a tax return, I can go ahead and search that level data inside of the advanced search. So that's why I think that it's really beneficial to have this tax level information inside of the system, so that way I can search on this as well. So right now I just ran a search for everyone who has an adjusted gross income of $10,000 or more, and I came back with 3 results. Now, this is really dependent on clean data because I might have more than 3 contacts that have an adjusted gross income of 10,000 or more. But if I'm not going in and manually putting in that data in the system, it's not going to return back an accurate result. But you can add in tiers in here. Maybe you wanted to add another layer to the search and you wanted to pull up everyone who has an account tax qualified. You can go ahead and add in different layers to the search as well. So I think that's the big benefit of putting in that tax level information, is so that you can search on that tax level information as well. Now, something else that we can suggest that kind of goes away from servicing taxes and goes more toward providing tax documents. So let's say we have our awesome client, Doc Brown, and we don't actually do his tax services, but man, every year, January 14th, he calls our office and he asks for those tax documents. Then what you can go ahead and use the CRM for is to go ahead and kind of get ahead next year. So you can anticipate that Doc Brown asks every single year, January 14th, for his tax documents. So what you can consider doing is creating a repeating activity that repeats annually in January to go ahead and provide those tax documents for Doc. So maybe next year he doesn't even have to call into the office. I already provide those documents to him, and that just makes him think more highly of my services. So if you want to do something like that, I would go to that contact record first. So I'm on Doc Records page right now. And if you click on the plus sign, you can go ahead and add anything new to Doc. And since I'm talking about adding in something to my calendar next year to remind myself to send him his tax information, then I'm going to go ahead and select on activities. And this is just the shell of information for the activity. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter in the subject and then create an edit so I can add in the bulk of information. All right, so I went ahead and put, excuse me, I went ahead and put that the subject is to provide Doc his tax documents. Now, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and create an edit so I can actually build in the meat and potatoes of this activity. And I think the most important thing to set up first is that repeat annually. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to repeats, set this to repeat yearly, and have this repeat once a year. Because taxes, like we said earlier, they happen inevitably every year. So I'm going to put 1 into repeats every year. And then for each, I'm going to go ahead and put January. So that way we can go ahead and make sure it doesn't repeat in February where Doc had already called in, and it doesn't repeat in December where it might be too early for Doc, but it repeats in January, right when he needs his documents. And I would even go ahead and check repeats yearly on, so that way we can guarantee this isn't going to fall on the weekend. Because maybe you set this up and January 14th fell on a Sunday that year. Well, you might drop the ball on sending your document to Doc because it's Sunday. So if you do check off this box, you could go ahead and make sure that it falls on a business day and not the weekend. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I want this to happen about the second Wednesday of every January, because I think that is toward the 14th of that month. And if I do have the activity happen a little bit earlier than the 14th, then that just gets that document to him a little bit sooner, but not too soon. So underneath description, I can go ahead and provide as much information. But before I get there, I do want to talk about repeat ends. And it is very, very suggested to put in a repeat end date. And that is so for, operation purposes, because what would happen if you didn't set an end date is it would create 50 years worth of repeating activities, because Redtail calendar goes out 50 years. So if you said you wanted this to repeat every year, it's essentially going to create 50 years worth of activities. And it's totally fine in this instance, but if you think of something like paycheck, where that would happen bi-weekly, that might happen for the next 50 years and might slow down the runtime of your calendar. So I would go ahead and suggest to put in a repeat ends date. So for speed purposes, it's not going to bog down the speed of your system, but also it helps to reassess whether or not it's necessary to keep doing this. Maybe after 3 years, Doc, he gets his items emailed because times have changed and everything's electronic. Then it would help me reassess whether or not it's necessary to keep doing this activity. So I can go ahead and put this out to January 2020, and then I'll reevaluate whether or not I want to keep doing it. And then underneath description, I'll go ahead and put in as many details here as possible, because you want to think about delegating this task off one day. If you wanted to delegate this to somebody, you want them to have the exact directions that you think are necessary so that the accurate service gets accomplished. So I can go ahead and say here, every year. All right, so I went ahead and put the gist here, every year Doc calls in. So now we're going to be proactive and provide those documents to him instead of him calling in. So I'm going to go ahead and set in the date. I want this to happen every January. So I'm going to go ahead and put January, and we'll go ahead and put that this is happening in 2018. And we said that he likes his documents around the 14th, but look at it did end up happening on a Sunday. So let's say that we want it to happen the Wednesday before. So maybe we get busy for a few days. It would at least get done by Friday. So I went ahead and put the date. I'm going to set this to an all day activity. So that way it's not on my to-do list to happen at 3 p.m. or 9 a.m., but it's on my to-do list on that day to complete. So it kind of sits at the top of my calendar like a to-do list and not in any particular time to complete. And go ahead and add in the type and category. The type is really helpful for your calendar color coordination. So maybe you wanted to make sure that all of your proactive relationship builder type attempts are in a certain color, then you can go ahead and add in a type and check off that type. But I don't have that in my system here. It was just a suggestion. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that the type of activity this is a client meeting. And for the category, I'm just going to say that this is for customer service because it's something that doc needs our service for and we're providing it. So I think this is a ton of information. You know, we have what the gist of this activity is. We have certain color coordinations and categories happening. It's set at the top of my to-do list at no particular time, and it's set to repeat for the next 3 years. So next year, I'm not going to get that call from Doc because I'm going to actually proactively provide those documents to him. Now you might consider something like a document portal. Redtail doesn't provide that, but if you do have a document portal, it would be a great time to use that. The next thing I want to talk about in regards to tax time is our tax providers. Because like I said, maybe we're not providing the tax services, but we have centers of influences out there that either reference clients to us or we reference clients to them. So if you do have centers of influence out there that you share clients in common with, I would go ahead and add them into the system so that way you can keep track of their information as well. So in our system, we have Mary Zamora. Mary Zamora is an accountant. She is a center of influence of ours. She is a great person to know in our network because she always sends clients to us. If she knows somebody that needs advisement, then she'll go ahead and send them to us. And if we know someone that needs accounting services, we'll send them to her. So we went ahead and added her to our system. And something else that you can think about implementing into your system is adding them to your database. So that way you can go to memberships on the left-hand side and you can see a visual list of the clients that you share in common with this person. So when I clicked on memberships on the left-hand side, I'm able to see a visual list of these 5 clients that we share in common. So that way I can see, you know, maybe it's worth meeting with Mary quarterly or monthly so we can keep building this relationship and keep sharing clients in common. So if you do have a similar situation and you want to go ahead and link that client that you share in common, then you can go ahead and type in that contact's name. And now what it's asking is, who is this person? So I typed in Fred Flintstone, and now it's asking, who is Fred? So Fred is not the accountant, he's actually the client, and Mary is the accountant. So if I add in that membership, now I can go ahead and see, you know, Fred is another person that we share in common, and we can continue to build this relationship. Also, when it comes to tax time, you might find that you're sending, you know, the same email over and over again, where you're saying, you know, it's tax time. Let us know if you need any documents. Here's our phone number. Or you might find that you're sending the same mailing every time. And if you do find that you're doing that, you might as well turn that into a template. So if I click on my name in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to go down to manage your account. And underneath manage your account within manage templates, we have an area here that says email templates. So if you do find that you send out the same tax email over and over again to those tax clients, you might consider creating an email template so that way you never have to write that email again. You just have to pull it from this template. So this is really roughly written, but essentially if you have a paragraph, a sentence, maybe it's a newsletter around tax time that you like to send, you could go ahead and turn that into a template. So whenever you need it, you just pull from that template and you never have to write this email again. So if you do find that this would be helpful, you can go ahead and create it into an email template. If your clients still prefer to use the postal service, we do have mail merge templates as well. So if you wanted to actually print out something and send using the postal service, you can go ahead and create a letter to send out as well. But if you want more information, you can click on the question mark and open up our Redtail help desk. And underneath training sessions, underneath recorded webinars, we do have more information on mail merges and email templates here. And also, while we're on the topic of taxes, RMDs is also an important topic that comes up. And we do have a session in here called RMDs and Redtail where you can learn all about the RMD process. But essentially, we talked about that here a little bit today because we talked about that tax qualified box. If you do check off that tax qualified box, then you can run an account report to pull up everyone who has a tax qualified account, and then you can narrow down this list by everyone who's 70 and a half to go ahead and deal with those disbursements. But check out that webinar if you want to learn more about RMDs or templates, and we are more than happy to provide that information. But lastly, since tax time is unpredictable and you don't know what your workload is going to look like, what I would suggest to do is adjust some of your preferences so that you can account for some balls that might be dropped. So if I click on my name in the top right hand corner, I'm going to go to Preferences. And toward the middle of the page for Preferences, you're going to have an option here that says Reminders. And what Reminders is I know I'm a visual person, so I'm going to open up Today in a new tab. And to do that, I'm going to right click on Today and click Open Link in New Tab. So that way we can keep this page open so I can get back to explaining this, but I can visually show you what I'm talking about right now. So underneath your Today page, you do have a section here that says Reminders. And this accumulates all your reminders here. You have your birthdays. If I click Filter here, you have your birthdays, your anniversaries, your account renewals, your client reviews, all of that here in one place. So my point is here, tax season might get you extremely busy, and you might not check this reminder section at all in the month of April. And you might forget anniversaries, you might forget birthdays, but most importantly, you might forget client reviews. And if we are in the advisory business, we need to meet with clients at least annually. So we can never afford to miss a client review. So if tax time gets crazy and we know that, then what I would suggest to do is to go to Reminders and set your client review reminder to an increment of days past due, like 30. So that way, if April is super crazy and you don't get to the reminders at all that month, you're still going to have those reminders that might have slipped through the cracks or that you might have dropped the ball on still showing up in your reminders. So this session is all about, dealing with stuff right now, but also anticipating stuff for next year. So you can choose to add in repeating activities and reminders that are set to past due. So that way, if things do get really crazy, you don't drop the ball on anything. That's really important. But otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team at 800-206-5030, and that's option 3 for support. But otherwise, happy tax season, and let us know if you have any other questions. Thank you and take care.